Hi, I'm Janet.
And I'm Roger.
We're amateur beekeepers and we live in the suburb of Marrickville, not far from the centre of Sydney.
We have two hives, a Langstroth and a top bar hive. The plants in our garden and the surrounding area provide plenty of nectar and pollen for our bees throughout the year.
We harvest quite a lot of honey and wax, so we thought we'd share some of our recipes and things to do with these great natural products.
Hi, today's recipe comes from Greece, hence the blue shirt. When I was at Metro Specs in Marrickville the other day, we started talking about bees and honey, as you do. And one of the guys who comes from Greece told me that one of his favourite things to eat as a kid was a honey and watermelon pie that his grandmother used to make. Now, the idea of cooking with watermelon got me interested, so I asked him to write down the name, which I won't attempt to pronounce. Searching the web, I soon found that this is a traditional flat pie that comes from the Cyclades islands in the Aegean Sea. It contains honey and watermelon and very few other ingredients. The pie I'm going to make has 750 grams of drained watermelon, a generous half cup of honey, 55 millilitres of olive oil for the mixture, some extra olive oil for the pan and to sprinkle on the top, 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, 1/4 cup of semolina, 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds, and 1 1/4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. The description panel below contains a list of all the ingredients and the instructions for making this pie. Now, I like to use, wherever possible, a watermelon with seeds, like this one here, rather than the modern seedless varieties, because I think these ones taste a little bit better. Time to get started. However, it does take a little more time as you cut the watermelon to remove all of the pips and seeds that are inside it. I'm going to cut this up into pieces about 1 or 2 centimetres, cubes about 1 or 2 centimetres in size, removing the seeds as I go. In this bowl I have about 850 grams of watermelon cubes. I'm now going to crush it by hand to get out some of the moisture and the juice, which I'll allow the juice to flow into the bowl below. And you should end up with something a bit like this, where you've still got some watermelon lumps and there's some crushed watermelon. I've turned the oven on to 160 degrees fan force and I'm preparing this 20 by 30 centimetre baking tin. Brushing a generous amount of olive oil over the bottom and sides. It's nicely well covered. I'm now going to sprinkle in 2 teaspoons of sesame seeds over the bottom. And we end up with something like this. I'll put that aside, bring in my big mixing bowl, into which I pour the drained watermelon, leaving the juice aside. Now, to this watermelon I'm going to add a generous 1/2 cup of honey. You don't have to be too exact with the ingredients with this recipe, it's pretty flexible. Maybe you have a little bit too much watermelon, a little too much honey, won't make a lot of difference. So that's a generous 1/2 cup of honey and 55 millilitres of olive oil. I will now mix this together with my wooden spoon so it gets nicely mixed. And then I'll put this aside and it's time to mix the dry ingredients. In this bowl I have 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, to which I'm going to add 1/4 cup of semolina and 1 1/4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Once again, we don't need to be too fussed about exact proportions. And about a tablespoon of sesame seeds. We then mix this all together. Okay, I'll bring back the other mixture with the watermelon, and now I'm going to add the dry ingredients to the watermelon and honey and mix it together well. Now the final mixture should be a little bit like a thick cake mixture. Not as runny as a batter, but not as thick as a biscuit mixture. And that's just looking a little bit too stiff to me, so I'm going to put in a little extra of the watermelon juice. The juice is delicious anyway, so what you don't use here, you can always drink later. Okay, this is looking pretty good, so I'm going to put it into the baking pan. Okay, I want to scrape as much of this in as we can get. And just spread it over the bottom evenly. So have something like that. We'll then just drizzle a little more olive oil over the top and sprinkle about another teaspoon of sesame seeds on top of that, just to give it a bit of extra lift. Now that's ready to go into the oven. It's going to cook for about 55 to 65 minutes. This pie is more like a tart or thin moist cake. You may need to experiment a little bit with the amount of watermelon juice and the cooking time and the cooking temperature in order to avoid having a pie that's either too moist or too dry. This pie cooked for 60 minutes in the oven. I let it cool for a little bit before cutting it into 20 squares. As you can see, there are still some watermelon lumps inside of the slice. The pie is delicious on its own or with cream or ice cream. It doesn't keep very well, so it's best eaten on the day it is made. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe or leave any comments or recipe suggestions below. Nice.